So welcome. I'm really excited to do this masterclass today. It's a topic that's close to my heart, increasing engagement and motivating your team without spending a cent, because I don't believe that this is an area, or I do believe this is an area where you can have a significant impact without spending too much money on it. So what I would like to start with is I would like to say that increasing engagement and motivating your team is something that does not always require a lot of money, but what it does require is time. And a comment or a question that I often have from managers and executives that I work with is, but I just don't have time to spend on the people stuff because I've got so much to do in my day-to-day work that how can I spend time on this? I just don't have the time. And I'm going to start with this question because it's such an important one. My answer is typically you can't afford not to spend the time. And actually, this is not something that is external to your job, but rather part of your job. Because when you get this right, when you invest the time in your employees, in your team, you get them engaged, motivated, and inspired, the results show for it. So you really want to be investing that time and seeing it as part of your job. This is what's going to make your job easier. This is what's going to give you the time to focus on the things that you want to focus on. Whatever it is that is part of more of your regular results, goals, objectives in terms of your business, you'll free up the time by devoting and paying attention to your employee engagement situation. So I'm going to say a last welcome to everyone. I see people keep coming on, so just want to welcome you. Say hi in the chat. Let us know where you're from. And we're going to be diving right in. So I'd like to start with a question to you. And my question is this: what is the transformation that you want in your business? Just imagine if you had engagement exactly as you wanted it. If your team was fully engaged, dynamic, motivated, inspired, at a high level of performance, what would be different for you in your business? And I'd love you to share your answers in your chat. I'm going to keep it open and see that you're answering, but talk a little bit about what would be the thing that you would notice. How would your business, how would your team be different if you were going to be fully engaged, if your team was going to be fully engaged? If you're struggling with that question, I can expand it even a little bit further to say, maybe share a challenge or a struggle that you're having around engagement with your team at the moment. So if you're not sure how it would look different, let us know. What is the challenge that you're having? Is it maybe an employee who you feel isn't exactly performing up to task, even though you feel you've been investing the time and really interacting with them, mentoring them, developing them, and they're still not performing? Is it a struggle around finding the right people? I don't know. I don't want to give you too many ideas about what it could be, but let us know. What are some of your struggles, and what are some of your, your ideal, if you could imagine it to be absolutely amazing? Okay, so I see there are some questions or answers here. Great, wonderful to have everyone here. I've got someone: employees think I'm too aggressive with my expectations. Okay, so high standards, that is something that I hear a lot. Managers who have very high standards or high expectations of their employees' performance, and they don't seem to align with that. That's a really good question. I'll look at that. We have another comment: I would be looking for tasks to give out to my colleagues instead of the other way around. Okay, that's interesting. Maybe, David, if you could tell me, okay, so this is answering the ideal, I would imagine. Okay, so you would want to give the task to your colleagues rather than get down to a task. Okay, this is something that I also often hear. Thank you for sharing that. Would like to see my online students more actively engaged? That's an interesting one, because here we have a slightly different relationship there. Okay. Non-performance, which I can't dismiss. Okay, that's excellent, something that often comes up. So please keep putting these answers in. What are the challenges, or what are the ideals? What would be different? This is incredibly useful, and I want to connect to it when we come to the end of the masterclass and see if we've been able to get some ideas around how to deal with that. But I will be addressing some of these issues, so thank you very much. Okay, what is the plan for today? I'm going to go very quickly through this. We've got a 45-minute webinar. I'm going to leave time for questions at the end, so revisiting the chat, any questions that come up during the webinar, and specifically we're going to get working, so be ready for this. The first thing we're going to do is I'm going to remind you of the engagement tool that you received as a handout when you registered for this masterclass. Please pull it out. If you've got it on hand, get it ready because we're going to be working with it. If you don't have it with you, no problem. I will show you. I'll put it up on the screen. It will just be easier if you can work with it in front of you. You can still do the work because I'd like to engage you in this webinar as well by doing your own work. We are going to be learning some stuff about the brain and engagement. And then I would love for you to walk away with at least one action that you can take to increase engagement right away. That's really the main idea of this webinar, that you actually walk away with something you can do. And of course, please do stay until the end because I do have a special offer for you just for the next 48 hours for the participants on this masterclass. So stay on and it will definitely be worth your while. I will also say this masterclass is being recorded. So I'm actually going to check. Yes, it is being recorded. So I will share the recording with you in the next couple of days. So if you're not managing to write everything down, don't worry about it. Write the key things that really resonate with you, and you can always re-watch at a later stage if you'd like to. I'd like you to know a little bit about me. I know that some people on this masterclass I already know, but some are new to me, so I'm really excited to meet you and have you on board. And I'd like to tell you a little bit about myself. So going through it very quickly, I'm an actuary turned leadership coach. The big question is why? And for me, it really is about working with executives and CEOs to make the transition from being an expert and a manager to a leader. Because when you get, there's a certain level of growth that you come to in your career where your level of expertise and your tactical management skills are not going to be enough to get you to that place of leadership, where you really are inspiring and engaging people because you have to deliver your results through the people that you lead. And that requires a different mindset. It requires a leadership mindset. It requires strategies around how you do leadership. And that is what I'm passionate about. Because when I was in the corporate world working as an actuary, I knew and I saw and I understood exactly the challenges of leading in business, where you have to now deliver and achieve results through people. It's not directly related to your output and what you do. You actually have to work through others to achieve results. And I was once that disengaged employee. And for me, there was something around not feeling a sense of purpose, not feeling connected to my work, not feeling like I had role models that I really could look up to. And that was very frustrating for me. So I decided to go back into that leadership, into that corporate space, and help leaders find their way, navigate through the whole idea of how to lead effectively, how to lead impactfully. And for me, my mission is that if we can change how we lead so that people become alive at work, then we have a far broader impact than just how can we make our businesses work, how can we make more profit. We actually contribute far more to society and culture and all of that. Okay, so let's pull out your team analysis tool. This is a tool that we are going to be using. It's called Engage Your Team. It's a tool that I've designed and used very successfully with many executives that I work with, specifically relating to their team. So I'm going to give you a minute to pull it out. This is what it looks like. It's 2 pages. I've just taken the top part of it and put it onto the screen. If you don't have it in front of you, the actual handout, know that you can go back to the email that you received and download it directly from there, or just copy the column headings that I've got on this page here. This was sent, I see there's a question around when was it sent. It was sent with your confirmation. So when you registered for the webinar, for the masterclass, you received a confirmation email with a link to download this handout. If you don't have it in front of you right now, like I say, you can work with it as I have it on the screen, note down the column headings, and you can download it at a later stage as well. What I'm going to ask you to do now is to actually think of the people that you manage, the team that you lead at the moment, and write down the names of the people in your team. So what you want to do is you want to take this handout, it's a table format, and under the column name, just write down the first name of the people that are in your team. If you want to apply to colleagues, or if you're in a situation where you're not managing people at the moment, think of people that you are in constant interaction with in your day-to-day life, in your work environment. I'm going to give you a minute to just write down the names of the people that you work with. First name is fine. This is for you. It's a confidential document. I wouldn't suggest sharing that necessarily with anyone unless you think it could be useful. It's really for your own reflection and analysis. So once you've written down the names of the people on your team, I'd like you to choose one person, doesn't matter who, doesn't matter which one, choose one person to work with for the purpose of this masterclass. And this person, I'd like you to see how many of the columns you can complete for this particular person. So say if the person's name is John and you put John in the name column, you want to ask yourself, what do you think are John's key talents? What are John's key areas for improvement? What personal info do you know about him? So do you know if he's married, in a relationship, if John has any kids, if you know the partner's names, kids' names, how old they are, boys or girls, any information that you might know about John, write it down. If you know anything about John's likes or dislikes, write those down too. What is John's preferred communication approach? So is it email? Is it walking up to John's desk and saying hello? Is it about picking up the phone? Is it WhatsApp? What's John's preferred communication approach? Do you know what John's career aspirations are? What's next for John in terms of what John wants? What motivates him? And then any other insights that you have, any other information that you know about him. And you can write it in keywords. I'll just give you a couple of minutes to complete this for the one person that you've chosen to work with. So for those of you who finished completing those columns, the rest can continue if you're still busy. What I'd like you to do is to, in the chat, write down how many of the columns could you fill in for John, for your John. So the employee that you've chosen, how many of the columns did you have a meaningful amount of information that you could actually fill in? I'm just curious about that. So just write down the number. No judgment here. It's not a test. But I'd love to hear. And I'll just give you a couple of minutes to complete that. Great, you've got 8. Another 8, wonderful. Got good managers here. 7, excellent. Let's see if anything else comes up. I'm happy to continue, but please do write in those numbers. 7, thank you. Okay, I see there's a question about the 2 columns. David, if you want to share which columns you're having trouble with, if you're not understanding what I mean, or if you're just not sure about how to answer it because you don't know about the employee, I'm happy to take a question on that so we can clarify. Oh, you're just not sure how to answer, okay. If you want to ask a specific question, I'm happy to, okay. Eric, no problem, thank you. Yeah. Excellent, so thanks for that. It's wonderful to see. So we've got a pretty good group here that can actually answer 6 of the 9 columns. That's pretty good, I have to say. And we're going to be coming back to this tool. So I want you to hold on to what you've done. You can put it aside for now, and we'll continue on. What I want to look at now is to look at, okay, what's happening around this engagement issue? What are the two views that we have? We have the manager's view, and for the manager, the types of things that are often here is, for my team, it's just a job. How can I get them to take more ownership and treat it like it's their own business? This is something that I hear a lot from managers. They just want their team to feel like they've got a stake in it. They've got ownership of the work. They often will say things like, I'm the only one who's going to be losing sleep over whether my business succeeds or not. How can I transfer that feeling of ownership, that feeling of responsibility to my team as well? Because when they walk away, they walk away. It's the end of it for them. So how can I do this differently? This is what the manager's seeing. What is our team seeing? What is our employee saying? Our employee, often we hear this through workshops that I do with middle managers who, have the experience of both being managers and having managers themselves. They often feel like it doesn't matter what I think because my manager doesn't listen anyway. I have no choice. This is a job and I have to pay the bills. I'm not going to be able to find anything better out there, so I just have to do what I have to do. And this feeling of not really having a voice and not really being considered is a very strong feeling for a lot of employees. So what does it say if we think about this? The employee is saying, my manager doesn't care, he doesn't listen, I just have to do what he says, it's a job and it pays the bills. And we've got our manager who's saying, why can't I get more ownership out of them? Why doesn't it mean something to them? How can they treat this job like this was their own business so that the results reflect on them and not just something out there that they can't connect to? And what I see is that there's a big disconnect between the manager's view and the employee's view. And it's really important to be able to bridge that gap so the manager can be more for the employee what the employee needs, and the employee can come to the party and engage themselves in order to be part of what the manager needs as well. Now, the responsibility for me lies in both sides. And I know that this masterclass is really about how can you as a manager increase engagement and motivate your team. This is a huge part of the manager's role, I believe. At the same time, we do know that the employee needs to take ownership of that as well. But we are looking from the manager's side and really want to understand what lies in this disconnect. Besides for which, that the manager is also an employee. The manager often has a manager as well. So it does work both ways. Now, I'd love to ask you, if you're willing to share in the chat, how engaged do you feel about your own work? How excited are you to go to work? And I've actually created a poll here, so I'm going to see if this works. Oh, it works. Okay, so if you can answer the poll. So this is completely confidential. I don't get to see who answered what. So have a look at this poll, and I'm going to launch it right now. There we go. How excited are you about your work on a scale of 1 to 10? If you just take a typical week, where 1 is, it's a job and I have to do it, 10 is, I love my work and I look forward to it every single day. Let's see these results coming in. Great, we've got lots of 7s and 8s, 9s and 10s, yay, 4 to 6, okay. Let's have a look, I'll give it a minute. Ah, this is exciting. Love seeing this happening live. Wonderful, we have some more results coming in. Okay, great. So this is really interesting. And as the results come in, I'm going to talk to them as well. I'll share with you that we're looking at about a third and a third at 7 to 8 and 9 to 10. So we actually have 60% rating their level of excitement with their work from 7 and above. And we have 20% in the 4 to 6 and 10% in the 1 to 3. So this is really not indicative of our average situation and what we see out in the workplace. And I'm going to show you some facts. But the thing is, the interesting thing is here, is that managers' level of engagement directly impacts their team's level of engagement. And that would kind of intuitively make sense anyway, right? So if you as a manager are engaged in your work, you're excited to come into work, that is going to filter through to your team as well. So that's a really critical piece of information. we're looking at our employees' engagement levels, we also need to be able to look at our own engagement levels and know that it impacts what's happening with our team. So that's number one. And number two, we do see, based on the research, that managers and executives definitely have higher engagement levels than staff that are not managers, okay, than individual contributors. Okay, so I'm going to end the poll now. Thank you, everybody, for participating. That was really great. Our winner was, just to let you know, on the 7 to 8 level of the scale, 30% below that, and 30% above that. So that's very interesting. Thanks, everyone. Great. So what are the facts? Let's look at those. Firstly, employees lie on engagement surveys. So this is something really interesting, because even though the surveys are anonymous, we do see, and employees admit this in the surveys, we see that 1 in 4 actually admit to being dishonest on the engagement surveys, which does create a little bit of a problem. How do we then gauge engagement if our employees are lying? And that's something we've got to look at. We know that employees quit because of their managers, and this is something I've seen varying stats about, but we know that between 50 and 75% of employees say they quit because of their managers and not because of the level of income or other challenges. Okay. We know that 70% of employees are not engaged and 17% are actively disengaged. So this is where we have, if you do the maths, we have about 15%, 13% that are actively engaged. And this is where our percentage or our stats for individual contributors or for employees are actually lower than the level of engagement for managers. For managers, we see a level of engagement of around 29%, and for executives around 40%. And this is all based on the Gallup polls that are done globally and in the US. If anybody's interested, I'm happy to share the details of that. Okay. 80% of our employees feel that they can't be their best at work. So if we look at that, what does that mean for us if we know that our employees, most of our employees, don't feel they can bring their best to work? It means we're not getting the level of performance that we can. Of course, then that impacts results. And then disengagement costs $500 billion per annum in lost productivity. So let's have a look at that very quickly, running through our engaged employee and disengaged employee. Important to know that the engaged employees are those that are inspired, they're motivated, they're proactive, they motivate others, they love their job, they communicate, they accept that making mistakes is part of their learning, they're collaborative, they'll ask for help. And what's really important to realize here is the connection between these engaged employees and their impact on our culture. They become brand ambassadors for our company. They become the ones who create the positivity at work and contribute to the culture of high performance and high engagement. On the other end of the scale, we have our disengaged employees, and these are our actively disengaged ones, where they are pushed to work. You have to work hard to make them work. They complain about work. They want to change their jobs. They avoid communication, blame others, work alone, and don't really ask many questions. They create a toxic environment. They don't contribute to the culture. They contribute to the negativity of the culture. And of course, it translates to staff turnover, absenteeism, and huge cost. It's important to know that most people lie somewhere in between. Okay, those are our two extremes. Most people will have periods where they are actively disengaged, and maybe some periods where just neutral. They're not particularly engaged. They're not actively disengaged, but they're not that motivated and excited about their jobs, and we're going to be talking about that as well. Okay, so what is this doing to my business? There's a huge cost associated with disengagement, and the three key elements that I've isolated here are reduced morale and gossip, which really contributes to destructive office behavior, negativity, and all of that environment feeding off each other. So when you have that negative corridor talk, gossip, it doesn't help to promote a healthy culture in an organization. Then we have the staff turnover and absenteeism, where there's loss of productivity. There's also the impact of constant change of people not showing up to work, people getting sick, which doesn't even help in terms of the people who may be in the neutral level of the scale. And then, of course, we've got the costs associated with hiring, training, replacing staff, time that it takes for executives to now retrain and mentor new staff, dealing with absenteeism and sick leave and all of that, and the costs associated with that. Okay, very quickly to show you some other stats from Gallup about comparing the top quartile and the bottom quartile of engagement in employees. So top quartile, most engaged employees, versus bottom quartile, least engaged employees, and what is the impact on absenteeism, turnover, safety incidents, quality defects, all way lower in the top quartile, and the things that are higher are the customer service and satisfaction metrics, productivity, sales and profitability. All of those are way lower, and there's a significant difference, and we know that this impacts our business results, which is really what's most important to us. So what's the issue here? Why are employees disengaged? And I'd love to hear some comments in the chat. So please chat away. Let me know what are the things that you think are the reasons for employees being disengaged. And I would like to move on into continuing with a little bit of the framework that I use in working with this issue. So the first part of the framework is looking at incentives versus motivators. And I think this is a really important thing to understand. If we look at what incentives are those money perks that get people to do their work, okay? So whether it's bonuses, rewards relating to monetary aspects, good salaries, any other financial incentives that get people to work, really brings them to that ground zero of doing the essentials at work, okay? Then we have our motivators, which is what takes people to high performance, really where they become proactive, they do the extra, they go the extra mile. And those things are actually not money related at all. We know we need to have a level of monetary reward, financial reward that is related to what's fair and what's reasonable and what's market related and will get people doing their work. We then have what is going to take them to that extra level, and tons of research done around it's actually not money related. What are those things? Those are things like recognition, a sense of purpose, having an environment where they can learn and be challenged and stimulated, getting in the moment feedback, having good relationships with their colleagues and bosses, having flexibility. So having a manager who understands that maybe with a community it's okay to have a day that they work from home, whatever it is. Those are the things that are going to motivate people to go the extra mile and get to that level of high performance. And so how can we motivate? That is the question that we are sitting with today, and that's really what we want to answer. And before I get into that and give you my 3 C's framework, I want to look at what's happening on the brain. I'm going to go through this really quickly because it is important to understand how our brain works. So what does our brain do? Our brain's main goal is to keep us alive, okay? It uses all sorts of tactics and ways, and our brain is hugely complex, of course, but the main goal is to keep us alive with 2 particular priorities. The first one is survival, anything to keep us at a level of survival, which means that we need to feel like we are part of a tribe. Our survival depends on being part of a tribe, being part of a community, and feeling like we belong. So I heard a wonderful talk by Don Miller, who wrote the Story Brand book. If anybody wants to read it, excellent recommendation. And he says that when somebody at work offers you a cup of coffee, they're going to get coffee for themselves, and they're offering to make you a cup of coffee as well. It's not really because they just want to be nice to you at that particular moment. It's actually because our survival depends on it. And how does it depend on it? Because I know that if I offer you a cup of coffee and get you a cup of coffee, you are going to like me. And then when we have to together fight the barbarians or the lion that comes and attacks us when we look for food, we will club together, we'll belong together because I brought you that cup of coffee, and we can fight the barbarians together. So it's all about survival. So even at a very unconscious level, everything that our brain strives to do is towards survival. We also know that to take it from surviving to thriving, our brain constantly searches for signals of reward rather than pain. So our brain moves away from pain and moves towards reward and pleasure. And those are the things that actually activate a part of our brain called the seeking system, which allows us to be creative, which allows us to generate new ideas. It allows us to create connections with each other. That is the part that we want to be able to use, and it can only function when we are not in survival mode. When our survival's okay, we feel safe, we can activate that seeking system, which allows us to seek pleasure, creativity, thinking, and all those good things that our human brains can do. Okay, so that's the one. The second part is conserving energy. So this is, again, it's got to do with survival, because we need to know that if we take a lot of effort to do something, then that means that we will be too tired if we do need to fight those barbarians later on when they come to attack us in the evening. So if we work really, really hard during the day and we use up all our energy and the barbarians come, we'll likely die because we won't have any energy left to fight them. So our brain really works hard to do things in the most effortless, easy, painless way so that we can conserve our energy. That's its two main priorities, both related to keeping us alive and both really what our brain focuses on. Okay, so what has this got to do with engagement? If we think that our brain's main purpose is constantly scanning our environment for information that helps us to survive and thrive, we need to understand that this is happening in the workplace as well. As managers, if we can look after that and keep our brains calm and safe so that survival is not threatened and we are given an opportunity to thrive, then we will get the best results out of our people. We'll get creativity, we'll get effortless work that doesn't take up too much energy and then threatens our survival as well. But what actually happens to us at work? Actually, the enemy of survival is fear. So when we meet things like this in our employees, I can't say what I think, that's fear-based. I can't make mistakes, also fear-based. I don't feel like I'm contributing. I can't do anything right. This is all stuff that kind of, if an employee is feeling that, they feel like their job's on the line. That's a fear-based thing. If they feel like their job's on the line, they feel like their survival is threatened, which means that our brain is now going to conserve energy. Our brain doesn't want to work too hard because it's under threat. Losing job is a survival threat, and therefore our brain doesn't want to work too hard. Everything becomes too much effort. It becomes hard work to try and do anything creative, anything out of the box, because we are sitting in this fear-based environment. And so our brain shuts down. It doesn't allow our seeking system to activate, to allow us to experiment, make mistakes, be creative, think out of the box, go the extra mile, put in the extra effort, because it's in survival mode, it's under threat, and it's trying to conserve energy and make sure that we live. Okay. So what does this mean for us as managers? It really means that if we can get to that place where we are working with our employees' brains to keep them safe, keep them engaged, keep them happy, it frees up all of that energy to actually devote into our work and into getting the results that we need. I hope that makes sense to you. And if there are any questions, I know I've gone through it quite quickly. If there are any questions, please do write them in the chat. And I really want to go into what you can do about it. This is you can't take the actuary, I suppose, out of me. I've come up with, this is my framework, 3 C's for employee engagement. And I've even called it C cubed for E squared equals 1 happy manager with a smiley face on the end. So our 3 C's for employee engagement will give us a happy manager and happy business, I have to say. Let's look at what the 3 C's are. Okay, thanks, Jan. Happy it makes sense. Okay, what are the 3 C's? We've got our competence, care, and contribution. And these are the things that will really help to keep our brains happy, calm, not fighting for survival, and not constantly trying to not use up too much energy to keep us safe. So if we look at each one of them, I'm going to go into a little bit more detail. Competence is about knowing I can do it. This is making sure we have people in the right people in the right roles. They are given the skills and the training to be able to do what they need to do in order to feel good about the job that they're doing, and giving them an opportunity for learning and growth, so that there's sufficient challenge in the work that they're doing that keeps people stimulated. The care part is about feeling that I'm needed. Someone cares about me. Someone cares about me beyond the results that I am here to deliver. And this comes, we'll look at a whole lot of ways that we can do that, but it really is about that connection and that relationship. And the last one is contribution. Contribution is about my work matters. I am somehow contributing to a bigger picture, giving over something that is more meaningful than just that kind of drudgery of the everyday 9 to 5. And I'd like to look at each one of these in turn. But as a manager, I want to reinforce. Thank you. We've got a question on recognition. I'm going to get there. We want to reinforce that if we can help our brain, or our employees' brain, including our brain, to survive and thrive and conserve energy, then we will create the ideal environment for our employees to feel happy, safe, and engaged. Okay, so what can we do in terms of competence? I've got 3 tips on each one. I'll go through them quite quickly. Happy to take questions at the end as well. So what are the 3 things we can do? And there are lots. This is a huge topic, I just want to say. I've really tried to distill it into things that you can take away that are practical and actionable. So the first thing is, do you have the right people in the right roles? And this is something that I often see as a big question that comes up. So an example from a recent case that I worked with one of my executives, he had a person on his team that just had the most wonderful desire to do good, but it wasn't working. She wasn't performing, constantly making mistakes. And eventually, through discussions and really wanting to understand how to engage her better, we came to the conclusion that she actually was not right for the role. And what happened is that he was able to find a role that suited her strengths, and he transferred her into another area of the organization, into another team where her strengths could really be put to use in a different way than what they were in his team. And she's been thriving from then. So do you have the right people in the right roles? Critical question to ask and answer. Strengths-based approach to build competence. People want to be challenged to grow and learn. People want that. We want to challenge them to grow and learn, but we don't want to challenge them to the point where it's creating a lot of stress. And in this example that I gave, it was really about that, understanding her strengths and putting her in a position where she can grow and learn. Where she was in the original team was just way too much stress for her, and she just wasn't managing to get on top of it. And here we have the question on recognition. Find what they are doing right and give them that recognition. This is actually related to in-the-moment feedback. I believe in giving in-the-moment feedback, whether it's about constructive feedback about what they can do better, or recognizing them for things that they've done well. I've put their recognition as a specific emphasis because we often forget to do this. When things are going well, we forget to recognize our staff. We forget to acknowledge them and to let them know that they're doing a good job. And this is something really critical and related to the competence piece. So here are my 3 tips on that. Moving into care. This is a huge area. Get to know your employees personally and professionally. Know what their home life is like. Know their situation. They might have a child who is in hospital undergoing surgery. Connect with them, send flowers or send a note, whatever it is. Make sure that you know and you're part of their lives. I don't know if you've heard of the term management by walking around, MBWA. It's a critical management technique, strategy, or leadership strategy. And this is about managers that before they sit down in the morning, when they come into work, before they sit down at their desk to just get on with their day, they walk around their team's space, wherever they're sitting, and they have a conversation with each team member to say, hi, how are you? What's happening today? Anything going on that I need to know about? And really connecting both personally and professionally. So, what are you working with? How's it going? Any challenges, any support you need? Or what's happening at home? How's your wife? How's the kids? Whatever it is. And then, of course, hugely around how we communicate and how we build relationships. A big one is about really listening, asking questions and listening, minimizing the telling approach, which is something that organizations are working very hard at, but we're still seeing a lot of, is the kind of command and tell. I'm the manager, so I know, listen to what I say. Actually, no, stop, ask questions, listen to what your team has to say, put away the distractions, the phones, the laptops, whatever else, and really spend that time in conversation, listening well. And the third element is contribution, which is about the bigger picture, connecting the dots. What is this work about? Why am I doing what I do every single day? And yeah, this is connected to purpose, and it really is about making it personal. Make sure that you can tie in what your people are doing to the bigger picture of the organization, that they understand that even if their job, we take, for example, an insurance company, who actually the purpose of an insurance company is huge. If you think about a house burning down, a car being stolen, we're really helping people get back on their feet after they've suffered a loss. And if every person in the organization can connect to that, whether it's the claims payment person, or whether it's the underwriting person, or even if it's the woman or the man who makes coffee, everything is contributing to that purpose of helping people revive themselves after a loss. And this is something that really is important to connect, so making it personal. I'm working with a pharmaceutical company at the moment where they're working on all sorts of medication, drugs, solutions for fighting cancer. And what the head of the business unit that I'm working with does is she actually takes her team to go and visit the patients. They get personal. They see how their work is directly impacting people who are sick. And it's a hugely, hugely powerful thing. Another aspect of that, which I think is really important to say, and something I see often lacking in businesses and organizations, is about joining the dots for people. So communicating the bigger picture. Another organization that I work with, in their leadership development programs, they actually talk about how global trends are impacting the business. So they look at how technology, the population growth, and other key topics relate directly to the business, and how each manager can start connecting to how business is impacted by these global trends. If managers connect to that and then they bring those stories back to the teams, it just adds a dimension of what are we doing here, what is this all about, down to what is the organizational strategy, why are we making the decisions that we're making, even if those decisions are so far removed and so high up in the leadership structure. It's really important to share those decisions with your teams. I see a huge difference in engagement when teams know what's going on, rather than when everything's kept hush-hush and only the top people know and no one's really giving any answers. So together with that, I really want to say it all has to be done in a very authentic way. So there's an example of a company where, not one of my clients, but something that I've read about, where it was a college, it's a call center for fundraising for a specific college. And what this call center did was they actually brought the students who received their bursaries to come and tell the call center people about their experience, what this bursary that they received did for them and how it significantly impacted them. And actually, it showed a raise in the amounts of funds collected by 171% increase in the funds collected. So this example is a great example of how it does work, but in another aspect of this particular exercise, somebody came in and piped up and said, oh, my manager will go to any lengths to make us work harder and bring in more money. And that was a slightly more negative approach, where instead of being inspired by the college student's story, they actually felt like this was a manipulation by the manager to get them to work harder. So I think you've got to be very careful, because you as the manager have to buy into the sense of purpose. You have to believe it yourself, because if you don't believe it and you're just going to bring someone in and try and kind of get this whole emotional thing going, it's not going to fly. It's got to be as closely linked and aligned with your own purpose as it is to the people who you are working with. Okay, how do we get to contribution? Very, very quick exercise that I love to share is that you just start with a question of what are you doing right now, and then ask 5 whys in succession. So for example, If I had to ask you, what are you doing right now? You could say, I am currently listening to a masterclass on employee engagement, which is absolutely true. That's exactly what you're doing. But why are you doing that? Well, you could answer, I want to learn some tips and tools to make sure that I can increase my employee engagement. And then you ask, why is this important? And here it's really important to connect to, well, because I want to be a better leader. I want to know that I'm doing my best to make my employees engaged and happy and alive at work so that they can give of their best. And you go, why? And another why, and you can see how you can go more deeply into connecting to your sense of purpose around what it is that you're doing. And actually you can do this with anything. You can take anything that you're busy with, even something that seems like the simplest thing, which is I'm listening to a masterclass on employee engagement, and you can get to a deeper purpose. And this is the type of conversation you can begin to have with your employees, and it doesn't have to take very long. But these are the conversations of listening and really asking the questions. So if you pull out your first page, you will see, and I'm just going to pull up my handout over here, you will see that on the first page we covered competence, care, and contribution. If you knew those answers to the questions about your team, I would suggest that you fill it in for everybody else on your team. The things that you don't know, go and find out. Have those conversations, get to know your team, and you'll see that the first two columns are around competence, the next three columns are around care, and the last three columns are around contribution. Those are the three areas that we want to make sure that we know and pay attention to with our team and engagement. And then the second page is really about what action can you take right now with your team. So same principle, write down the names of your team members under the name column, and then ask yourself the question, what can I recognize them for right away? That's in your competence. What input can I offer for their professional development? That's feedback and competence again. And what do I need to change in my approach to working with that particular team member? And that is around contribution, because it's really up to you, the leader of the team, to be able to make those connections for your team around contribution, purpose, joining the dots, communicating, and making sure that they can be part of the bigger picture and understand that their work matters. This you can definitely help out with. So here are the 3 C's to remind you. And just to end off with some more figures about how do you benefit by paying attention to employee engagement and really putting those principles into practice. So we can see that employee performance increases by 40%, customer satisfaction increases by 18%, your financial success increases 4.5 times, and the last one, which I'm not able to read at this moment, I know it's there. Okay, decrease employee turnover, an important one, by 14%. Those are the benefits. So paying time and attention to employee engagement is actually going to free up your time to deliver on the business results that you really need to spend time delivering on. And I'd like to end off with this wonderful quote from Dan Cable, who wrote the book Alive at Work, excellent book, another recommendation. And the quote is, as leaders, we have a chance to make life more meaningful and more worth living for the people that we lead. And I think that is a hugely purposeful mission statement for leaders to have. So that's it. Thank you very much. I've loved this. If you have any questions or suggestions for topics, I'm available on email. Feel free to contact me. And I'd love to hear what other topics you'd like me to do masterclasses on. So have a beautiful evening, morning, afternoon, wherever you are, and all the best.